Hello everyone and welcome back to All About Steph 1 with me, Steph. Today we are venturing into morbid territory and we're looking at when will F1 die, as you could probably tell by the title. F1 announced last year in 2019 that it was going to become much more sustainable and it was aiming for carbon neutrality by the year 2030. Obviously, it had to put in place a very aggressive strategy in order to ensure that it was going to be able to meet this goal, but I'm asking myself and you in this video whether it's actually realistic and whether F1 is going to achieve what it says it wants to achieve. There are three things that brought this video to the forefront of my mind. Number one was Honda announcing it was exiting the sport at the end of 2021. Number two was F1 releasing its provisional 2021 calendar. And number three was F1 releasing its annual sustainability one-year review. Number one. Let's look at Honda and its announced departure from F1. Honda's statement said that it was looking to strive for the realization of carbon neutrality by 2050. Now, surely if F1 wanted to be carbon neutral by 2030, surely this is in line with Honda's values or Honda's goals. Them leaving the sport then just suggests to me that they don't believe that Formula One is necessarily going to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. Honda is not the only car manufacturer or engine manufacturer that has avoided Formula One in the last decade. We had rumours of Porsche, we had BMW rumours, Audi rumours, and those three manufacturers all ended up in Formula E, which is actually a carbon neutral sport. Mercedes also have a team in Formula E, so they are primed to leave Formula One if they ever decided that the sustainability objectives of Formula One didn't match their own. Mercedes leaving Formula One would be a massive loss as it supplies 3 teams currently, soon to be 4 teams, including McLaren in 2021. So this would have a massive effect on Formula One if that ever was something to come to fruition. Regardless, Honda's vote of no confidence in Formula One then gives me a vote of no confidence, and I'm not entirely sure that Formula One is going to successfully reach carbon neutrality. Maybe eventually carbon neutrality is on the table, but Honda doesn't seem to think it's going to happen by 2030. Reason number 2. Now, 2021 is going to see us go to 23 different locations, 23 countries, 23 races, which is the most we have ever had on a Formula One calendar. Formula One is a logistical nightmare, and the logistics of getting all the freight and everything that makes the circus what it is, the logistics of getting them to every single race, all 23 of them, is going to be extremely difficult. In 2018, Formula One estimated its carbon emissions to be at 256,551 tonnes, and that was just an estimation. 45% of that figure is solely the emissions that come from freight and the logistics, so bringing everything to and from every single race on the calendar. Yes, Formula One does use ships to go to the flyaway races, and that reduces the amount of its carbon emissions as shipping is much more environmentally friendly than flying. However, when we have back-to-backs or even triple headers, shipping is not an option. Everything has to be flown because it just won't get there on time. If anyone is interested in the logistics of Formula One, go check out Wendover Productions' video on the insane operation. Moving on from logistics, nearly 28% of Formula One's estimated emissions comes from ferrying the people that are required to put on Formula One to and from the races. Only 0.7% of the entire Formula One emissions actually come from the cars that go around on track, comes from them testing, practicing, or actually racing. So they are the least problematic part of the Formula One operation. At the minute, 5.75% of the fuel that Formula One has to use contains biocomponents and therefore is much more sustainable and viable for long-term plans. However, this is still only a small amount, and Formula One is working to ensure that the fuel is becoming a lot more sustainable because the cars do rely heavily on crude oil, which is a finite resource and it's going to run out in the next 50 years. These fuel developments, coupled with the new engine regulations that are set to come in 2026, could definitely provide us with a much more sustainable, much more environmentally friendly engine, and therefore a much more environmentally friendly package. But as I said, the cars are really not where the massive problem lies with Formula One. It comes with logistics. And for me, I don't see Formula One achieving its sustainability goal if it continues to add more races to the calendar, more triple headers, and continues to basically make the circus even more crazy than it already is. It just seems like Formula One is increasing the amount of races we have without thought for the sustainability plan or the long-term impact that these races and the amount of races that we have will create on the environment. Number 3, the sustainability report. Now, earlier on in November, Formula One did announce and release its updates and what it had been getting up to in terms of sustainability in the last year. As I mentioned before, with regards to fuel and engines, Formula One has actually created a working group that is solely designed for the development of more sustainable fuels and an engine that will couple with that. While Formula One has explored hybrid technologies in the last decade and we currently use a hybrid engine, Formula One can't go fully electric, so it's still going to have to work with the hybrid technologies and biofuels in order to create something that is sustainable but isn't a fully electric engine. However, as I stated, the Formula One issue right now is not with the cars and how sustainable they are, because they make up such a minute amount of the carbon emissions. Formula One's problem is with its operation and its logistics. Due to the situation that the world is in right now and the reduced amount of people that can be going to and from every race, Formula One had to accelerate its plan to deliver remote broadcasting, and this has therefore reduced the amount of people that have to travel to the races by 36% and reduced the amount of freight that Formula One has to take to and from the races by 34%. This means that 70 tons worth of freight, which would usually have been travelling to every single race on the calendar, no longer has to be transported to these races, which is a big win in terms of reducing the logistical footprint. I'm really interested to see whether this figure will stay the same, whether it will continue to decrease, or whether it will go back up when things begin to go back to normal after this crazy year that we've had. Also, all of Formula One's offices receive energy from 100% renewable resources. Formula One has received the 3-star accreditation from the FIA for its work towards sustainability. Doesn't mean that it is sustainable, but it's work towards it. Formula One has also signed the United Nations Sport for Climate Action framework with several other sports, which means that it is working to educate on climate change, working to ensure sustainability for the future, etc., etc. All of these things seem like great steps for Formula One to have made in the first year of its sustainability plan. However, some things seem really contradictory to me. For example, the creating more races on the calendar and still expecting carbon footprint to be reduced. Maybe it's too soon to say whether Formula One is going to achieve its goal of carbon neutrality by 2030. Personally, I don't believe it's going to happen, and maybe that makes me a little bit cynical, but I do not think that Formula One is going to achieve that goal, and I don't think Formula One is going to last forever. The title of this video was, "When Will F1 Die?" And my answer to that is before the end of the first half of the century. So before 2050, I think F1 will no longer exist. There are so many racing series out there now that are becoming so much more sustainable and that are evolving with the times, whereas I feel like Formula One isn't that kind of sport. The fans and the sport itself is so averse to change that I genuinely do not see it adapting quickly enough in order to keep up with the fast-paced moving world of the 21st century. Now, as a Formula One fan, I would love to be proven wrong, because hopefully I will be around by 2050 and hopefully I will still be able to watch this sport that I love so much. But I believe Formula One's goals are diverging. On the one hand, you have this calendar which has become very extensive, and yes, it's brilliant. We're going to have a ton of racing to watch, and that's going to be really great from a fan's perspective. But you also have on this side the sustainability goals that Formula One have put in place. Whether they are viable, whether they're feasible, it's yet to be determined. But for me, these things can't go hand in hand. And so Formula One needs to make a decision on whether sustainability is more important or whether the amount of races that there are on the calendar is its priority. So I've told you when I think Formula One is coming to an end, but I would really like to know your opinion. So let me know down in the comments below what you guys think and whether you think F1 is an eternal sport, whether it will last forever or whether it will eventually come to an end. Very depressing topic, but thank you for sticking with it. If you have, don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed, comment down below and subscribe if you have not already. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.